Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another discussion video. In today's video, I want to talk about the top meta strategies going into the Set 13 release. We just had pre-release weekend, so you guys may have had an opportunity to get your hands on some of the physical Set 13 cards. So with that in mind, we're very quickly moving into a new format. Wanted to give you guys my speculation as to what I think is going to do very well coming into the new meta. That being said, if you guys are new here, definitely subscribe, hit that bell so you never miss Dragon Ball Super card game video. And if you guys want to prep for tournaments that'll be more competitive in nature, make sure to check out the Patreon down in the description below. You can read the articles there, see where my head's at competitively, as well as inquire about some coaching if you want to improve at the game. That being said, let's get started. All right, firstly, talking about yellow, you'll notice here, no Set 13 yellow decks. I really just don't think that Future Gohan and androids are going to be able to compete with Mecha Frieza and Sin Shenron. Firstly, I think Mecha Frieza is going to be an absolute juggernaut in the upcoming meta. We've already seen it doing insane things in Set 12, more so towards the end of Set 12. It's actually won 2 events, and it's no stranger to top cut, right? Mecha Frieza has been topping like crazy since its release, but the more recent weeks, it does have 2 Ws under its belt, which I think only gets better in Set 13 because Power of a Super Saiyan is a generic yellow extra card coming out, and we all know Mecha Frieza loves his generic yellow extra cards. This card for 0 energy allows you to tap battle cards in unisons, and before that, yellow actually didn't have many ways to interact with unisons. So now getting that, Yellow and Mecha Frieza in particular are able to cover all of their bases really well. This opens up a lot of building paths for Mecha Frieza as well. You can still go with the blue-yellow engine if you want to play Zamasu Super Combo plus Violent Rush Bojack. Then you're just tapping down everything, battle cards, leaders, unison cards, all that good stuff. But also, Mono Yellow will seem a lot better because now you don't have to play Zamasu Super Combo. You can still play your draw Super Combo of choice and still have the ability to tap things mid-battle, getting more ways to use Bergamo Ferocious Roar, getting more ways to put Poutine in play. So with that in mind, I think Mecha Frieza only gets stronger. I mean, the interaction with Universe 9 Assemble is already insane for the deck, right? And I think Sin Shenron, not really going to go anywhere. I think the aggro version of Sin Shenron with access to Cell Xeno is really just a super cheesy aggro combo deck. I mean, there's not many decks that can deal with what Sin is trying to do as early as turn 2, turn 3. We haven't really seen Sin Control doing all that much in the more recent weeks, but I still think the Sin 9 drop is a really powerful boss card that is tough for a lot of decks to deal with. Like, even if you are able to remove it, Sin is going to gain a lot of advantage off of you removing it anyway. So it's almost like a lose-lose situation for the opponent. And again, I don't think androids and Future Gohan are going to quite be able to live up to the hype that these 2 decks are already producing. Future Gohan, just a little bit too clunky. Like, it gets to its boss monster a bit too late, and honestly, getting that engine startup is quite difficult. The 1 drop makes you jump through hoops to even get it to turn into a blocker, and the 2 drop, a little bit energy costly, susceptible to counterplays, things of that nature. And then androids, again, I think it's just a clunk issue. I think that when you're Mecha Frieza just doing all these interruptive things that Yellow wants to do, and you're doing those things for free, it's better than, you know, playing Future Gohan or androids, unfortunately, where for the majority of that stuff you have to pay energy and you don't have the flexibility of doing things for free as much as Mecha does. So I do think these will be the 2 premier yellow decks of the Set 13 meta. Time will tell, though. Next up, talking about black, which is arguably the top color of the current meta. I think Dark Broly and Vegex are going to stay very strong. Nothing really strikes me as a hard check to either of these decks. Vegex, the super fast, super free deck, just spamming battle cards for pretty much no cost, very low to the ground, super aggressive stuff. Also a very like 1-drop spam heavy build now from what we've been seeing with Vegex over the past several weeks. So I really don't think anything comes in and strictly checks Vegex, so I don't expect it to drop in power at all. Dark Broly, pretty much same thing. I mean, the thing with Dark Broly and how well it's able to do is there are arguably more checks to Dark Broly, which is kind of funny because Dark Broly also spans battle cards for free, but they're bigger than the Vegex battle cards. We actually have a lot of checks to, you know, high cost guys coming down relatively early, like Violent Rays, like Heroic Prospect Trunks, things of those natures. And Dark Broly is kind of tied to, you know, his success is tied to how much those cards are in the meta or not. And we know Red's pretty popular. We'll talk about Red in a second, but I don't think Red is really going anywhere. So with that in mind, I think we'll still see this fluctuation of like, okay, Dark Broly dominates one week, then a lot of people are playing Dark Broly counters, so it's not really doing all that hot. Vegex, not really going to run into that same problem. I think it'll just be a pretty consistent topping deck here or there, because again, super free, super fast. But newcomer to the block, I think Makikabora is going to be a very, very good black deck in set 13. It's very unique in what it does, being a very new take on Wish, as well as having a backside that steals your opponent's battle cards and gives you a leader based win con, which oftentimes are relatively tough to deal with. We look at Reboot Gohan and we know that leader based win cons are relatively tough to deal with. Now keep in mind, Makikabora, it's going to happen a lot later in the game than Reboot Gohan. The thing about Reboot Gohan is you pressure your opponent so much so quickly that you're winning the game on turn 2, turn 3. Your opponent doesn't quite have the resources to deal with it. And your leader is also beefier in Reboot Gohan, right? Like 25k triple strike, triple attack leader, as opposed to a 15k triple attack leader. And there are ways to bolster your leader's power, you know, in that endgame shot, right? So that's not totally to say that Makikabora is nowhere near as powerful as Reboot Gohan. I just think that overall the deck is very strong, does a lot of things for free, has that leader based win con. And Spring Kai Time, unfortunately, I don't think it's quite going to stand up. I think the deck can be good, and there's probably still some more things to solve about that deck, but blue so far just seems to be an auto loss for that deck, because many of its skills require you to play a battle card by Overwhelm, and if they play Godsling Technique Trunks, that effect essentially gets negated. You can't do it, you can't Overwhelm again for the turn, so you basically miss out on several effects because your opponent's playing blue. So I think it's going to be a super bad matchup for the deck, and you know, maybe some way the deck can play around that, but we'll have to kind of wait and see. Moving on to red, King Piccolo, I don't think is going anywhere. I think the deck is still incredibly free at what it does. It just plays a ton of battle cards. Drum is still an insane defensive card, but I think King Vegeta comes in and really makes a strong stance for mid-range / aggressive red. King Vegeta just does a lot of powerful things. Keep in mind, with the Young Invader engine, giving your opponent the Young Invaders turns many of your cards in your hand into 1-drops. Now, comparing to King Piccolo, King Vegeta does less things for free, which is definitely a downside when comparing to King Piccolo, but I think King Vegeta builds a better offensive board. Like with the 1-drop 19k criticals, you have the Goku swing and then he turns into a blocker. You got the Broly with barrier, lets you look at the opponent's hand, and then you have like the Vegeta boss monster, for instance, which is a pretty big headache for your opponent. If they remove it, they're going to burn a life, but besides that, he minuses all your opponent's battle cards power when they play cards or attack, right? So I think Vegeta puts a lot of good pressure onto the board. King Piccolo can do that as well, don't get me wrong, but it takes them a little bit longer to get that going. They kind of have to get the drum and Piccolo combo going, or sorry, the tambourine Piccolo combo, where they're able to turn that into a 40k dual attacker, right? So I think that's a little bit where King Piccolo halts in like the aggression department, but I think the deck just still does insane things. In red too, don't forget, like we still have Launch. It's going to be pretty good. I think Bardock in set 13 also has a chance to be good as well. I just don't really see Bardock doing as much as these two decks, because we've seen decks like Bardock a million times, right? Just low to the ground, aggressive decks, very similar to Vegex, but I think it just does a little bit less of a free type of thing compared to Vegex. But I think actually Vegex is a pretty good comparison for red Bardock, so I think Bardock can be fine. Bardock can be good. These are just what I'm thinking as the premier red decks of the set 13 meta. Moving on to blue. Blue, baby. Very unique in what it does, in the sense that it is a pure blue control deck. Absolute control. Nothing in blue is quite like it except for Invoker. Invoker is not quite anywhere on this list. I think it'll still be a good choice, but I think Invoker is still very, very pilot dependent. You got to put a lot of time into it. You got to know how to deal with those aggro matchups, because if you don't, it's going to be a pretty tough time for you. But in regards to pure blue, I think Blue Baby is still going to be good as a pure control pick. And honestly, for me, Bojack and Team Gohan are still pretty up in the air. I would not be surprised if they, you know, show to do well in the meta, or if they completely flopped. I wouldn't be surprised either way. I do think Gohan has pretty strong mid-range capabilities, but I also kind of think of it in the same way that, like, if Soul Striker is not really doing all that much in the meta right now, what hope does Blue Gohan have? Now, Blue Gohan does have some things going for it, but then again, Soul Striker can play all the cards that Blue Gohan can play. So I think their success will be relatively tied to each other. I think they both can do well. I just don't think they're going to overtake the meta or anything. Bojack, being much more of like an archetype based deck, I do think has potential. I think it, you know, does a lot of cool things in the combo step. I think it builds a board for relatively cheap. Boss Monster, though, it's not really all that difficult to answer it, to be honest. So we're gonna have to kind of wait and see how that card impacts the meta. But with that in mind, I think they do have potential to be good, just not exactly sure how much impact they're gonna have in the meta. If you have a thought about that, leave it down in the comments. And then, guys, we're talking about green. Not fully sold on green, to be honest. So, Reboot Gohan in your best of 3 events, you're going to see a lot of, I think. I mean, maybe not a lot. Probably not an overwhelming amount. But I think that Reboot Gohan is still going to be one of, if not the strongest green decks. Just that ability to win the game so incredibly, ridiculously early. I think Reboot Gohan should still be a really good pick for green. Even though I wouldn't really call it a green deck, Reboot Gohan could be any color and it would still do the same thing. But it's a green leader, so we're talking about it here. I really do think Tien is one of the best ways to play green generic toolbox. If you're interested in that strategy where you're just playing good green cards that clear up the board and deal with your opponent's problem pieces, I think Tien's a really, really good pick. King Cold, I mean, Chilled is pretty much a joke of a deck, right? So King Cold, I don't know, man. I've actually been testing King Cold quite a bit, and I'm not really sold on it really revitalizing green in any super meaningful way. I think the deck has potential to top here and there for sure. I don't think it's going to be absolute garbage. I just don't think it's going to really like bring green to the top anytime soon. But anyways, guys, that's what I wanted to talk about with you guys today. My speculation for what is coming up in the upcoming meta in terms of what's going to be strong or not. I do want to know in the comments below if you agree, disagree, what you guys think. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.